Alrighty, welcome to episode 3 of Ultralight Bikepacking 101. Today we're going to be discussing insulation. Now we're not going to be diving into what sleeping bag or what quilt or whatever to use. We're strictly discussing, for those who don't know, how insulation works. And we're going to talk about synthetic versus down insulation. So the way insulation works is by lofting. So I'm going to use my hands to describe this. What happens is you put this over the top of you in the middle of the night, right? See how puffy that is? So what happens is that lofts up. And then as the heat leaves your body, it gets caught in that insulation and then it circulates it, right? So the more this lofts up with down, the warmer you're going to be. Now the way that works is, think of it like this. So the way down works is down has a lot of feathers that loft up. Let's say this is one down feather from my wrist to the top of my fingers, right? So 550 fill down is going to be about like this. Let's say 650 is like this, 750, 850, 950 is just going to be like this. So one feather with 950 fill is like 3 or 4 with 550 fill down, right? And so when you use a higher rated down, it takes less feathers to make that loft, which means it's going to be lighter and it's going to compress a lot easier when you're packing that down to stick into your pack. The way synthetic works is most synthetics, they're just like sheets that they're laying on top of each other, right? So this is what synthetic would look like. So it'd take like 8 synthetic sheets to equal roughly, you know, that's not scientific, but that's the basic concept, to equal 1 feather of down. So those feathers fall in lightly, they just kind of stack on top of each other. So another way it works is when you get inside, so not only that down or that synthetic is catching the heat coming off of your body, right? What's also happening is that's heating the air pockets around you. That's what's keeping you warm. So if you have a bag that doesn't leave any air pockets, you're not going to be the warmest. But if you have a bag with too many air pockets, your body's not going to be able to heat up that space. So take that into consideration. Also, when a bag is rated for 30 degrees, keep in mind that every body type is completely different. So it completely depends on what you're usually used to. You might find that a 30-degree bag is actually 40 degrees for you. That's for you to figure out. A 30-degree sleeping bag that's full synthetic isn't going to be as lofty as a 30-degree down, but it is going to be heavier because it's a lot of sheets stacked on. It's like blankets just compressing on top of you, right? So that's the difference between loft between the two, and that's why loft is so important. So usually if you have your stuff compressed, let's say you're cooler weather camping, you have your stuff really compressed, as soon as you set up your hammock, you're going to want to take out your bag setup and let that start lofting, so that when you get in, it's as high as lofted as it'll be, and it'll be really warm for you. Now, I will say with down, whenever you buy it, you're going to have a stuff sack you can put it into. You don't want to leave it in there, because if you leave it in there for a long amount of time, you're actually going to damage those feathers. Down is rated for roughly 30 years, so long as you take good care of it. Down is very specific when you wash it, so make sure to follow the directions. Down has a really high shelf life. We've covered the basics of insulation. Let's now directly compare synthetic versus down, okay? So one of the benefits to synthetic is that when wet, it doesn't affect its rating. Now, like we described, because it's those sheets stacked on top of each other and things keep you warm by lofting. So let's say those sheets are stacked this high. What happens when those get wet? They're not really going to compress because they're already compressed down. So that's still going to keep you warm. It holds its temperature when it is warm, okay? Now, it is heavier. Synthetic is always going to be, not all. Generally, it's going to be heavier, right? Because you've got those sheets stacked on top. Now, you do have high-end synthetics. So you have Primaloft. There's another one that just escaped my mind. I can't think of it. The way they make those synthetics is they're actually swirling them to make them loft like down. So when you see pricier synthetic bags, that's usually why. Or high-end coats that companies make that are pricey when it's not down, that's why. So it's usually really nice synthetic. Another thing with synthetic is it's not going to be as packable. So it's going to be heavier. It's not going to be as packable. So it's going to take up more space. But what's the benefit of that is you're saving on price. Rarely, it's never as expensive as down, ever, because you can just make it. You don't have to get it from animals. So the ultra benefits to synthetic is price, and when it's wet, it's still going to keep you just as warm. Might sacrifice a little, but not much. With down is ultra packable because it lofts so high and it takes very few feathers to get the same loft. It's weightless and it's going to pack down next to nothing. Now, down will never hold its temperature when wet like synthetic, which is why so many people will treat the outside so that it's not going to get wet. Most down you're going to purchase is treated. It's still not going to be as good as synthetic, but they treat it so that when it gets wet, it's not going to lose all of its loft. It's going to maintain that a little bit, right? So it is hydrophobic, it's lighter, and it's more packable. Down you have different fills. So this one, it's super lofty, super big, super puffy. This is an 850 fill. They have it down to 550 fill. So depending on the price, you might see something that's full down, it's not as expensive, it's not going to be as high of quality, meaning it's not going to loft as much. When it's a lower down rating, it doesn't loft as much. What does that mean? It doesn't pack as well, and it's not going to be as light. But if it says 30 degrees, it is going to be warm. Something I've also found with down is when a down setup says this is rated to 30 degrees, it's pretty darn well near 30 degrees to me. When a synthetic says 30, I usually just translate that to mean 40. I've never noticed synthetic to be as on point as down is in that arena. There are synthetic and down blends. So when you see a lot of sleeping bags, Big Agnes makes one, the Boot Jack and the Spike Leg, most companies do. What's the one with the North Face? I can't think of it. But there are a lot of awesome low price conscious sleeping bags around 100 that are less than $200. That's usually a synthetic and down blend. So you're going to get that warmth, but they're not having to put as much down in. So whenever you see those price conscious ones that say down, it's generally going to be a blend. So which one did I go with? I went with down, 100%. And I went with it, why? Because our channel is called Ultralight Bikepacking. I wanted the lightest and the most packable setup I could get so that it would squish down next to nothing, so that it's not going to add a lot of extra weight into there. Now, that is up to you to decide. There are some great lighter options that have, synthetic in them, or a blend. And we'll discuss those in later episodes, as I said, when we talk about bags and quilts. But for the most part, I chose the full down setup. I didn't mind spending it because down has a 30-year life rating. So while it is pricey up front, if you take care of it, it's going to last a really long time. On top of that, most of these companies are going to have awesome warranties. And then if you lose feathers, you can even send it to them. They'll put more feathers in. That's one really cool thing with outdoor companies, is they're going to take care of you. But tune in for next episode. We're actually going to be showcasing a bunch of different hammock brands and which hammock we went with, so you can see the comparison. So catch you next episode.